Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, our exclusive one-on-one interview with Ban Ki-moon, the new chair of the Boao Forum, former Secretary-General of the United Nations, about the prospects of a summit between the leaders of DPRK and South Korea. And a sit-down talk with former WTO Secretary-General Pascal Lamy about China's path to reform and opening up. And a conversation with Li Yan, the coach of China's speed skating team, which brought home the lone gold from the PyeongChang Olympics. You're watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. The DPRK Supreme People's Assembly convened on Wednesday. The Assembly generally gathers once a year to approve the national budget and other matters. The meeting comes just a few weeks ahead of the first summit between DPRK leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in on April the 27th, and 2 weeks after the DPRK leader paid an official visit to China. At this critical moment, I spoke earlier this week at the Boao Forum to former UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, who used to be also a South Korean diplomat, on the prospect of long-term peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. What is your assessment of all the latest developments and the tangles between countries and among countries? Mr. Chairman.
We have a long-standing, very worrisome situation still persisting in Asia, particularly surrounding Korean Peninsula. With the forthcoming South-North Summit meeting and also U.S.-North Korean Summit meeting in May, we sincerely hope that this will really create much more favorable atmosphere in this part of the world, particularly surrounding Korean Peninsula. This will help promote socio-economic prosperity and development.
Do you think at this point sanctions should be discussed against the DPRK, and meanwhile the military exercises should be discussed between the U.S. and South Korea? And at the same time, should there be a timetable for the denuclearization be discussed between North Korea and some of the other players, let's just say, of the previous six-party talks? These are very specific issues.
Is in fact separate issues. The sanction itself on North Korea was not to punish North Korea. It is a strong will of international community to show that the members of the United Nations should behave and properly conduct their way of life in international affairs. Those sanctions were imposed because of North Korea's violation by testing nuclear weapons 6 times since 2006 and numerous launches of ballistic missiles, including intercontinental ballistic missiles. And therefore, it may not be fair to just put together in the same track as a way of bargaining chips. What is important at this time, the North Korean nuclear weapons and its development programs must be dismantled in a complete and verifiable and irreversible way. What we term it as a CVID, complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement. This is a very important issue. It's not only an issue of North Korea to China or South Korea. It's a global issue for global peace and security. In this regard, I'd like to really express my sincere appreciation to President Xi Jinping, who has invited Chairman Kim Jong-un of North Korea, where North Korean leader has for the first time expressed his readiness or willingness to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. I sincerely hope that it is a genuine commitment which will be discussed and agreed upon by South Korean talks with the South Korean leaders and with the U.S. President.
Having said that, though, let me ask you about the next step. What to you is a successful North-South summit? What are the barometers you, as the chairman of the Boao Forum, as an informed citizen, and as a former Secretary General, that you think is termed as successful?
It's very important that the South-North summit scheduled for on April 27 must be a great success. This is going to be the third one since 2000 and 2007. This is a very important, critically important timing. I know that there are many assessments then why North Korea at this time is coming out to agree to a summit meeting. I think that concerted pressures through sanctions imposed by Security Council of the United Nations might have just made them no other choice but to come out. Since there have been many such cases when international community have been, deceived by North Korean behaviors, then I sincerely hope that this time we'll be able to have some test the genuine nature, the genuine intention of North Korea. Yeah.
Ban Ki-moon, the former Secretary General of the United Nations from 2007 to 2016, is currently the chairman of the Boao Forum for Asia. He has been elected anew into the position. He was named also earlier as one of the top 100 global thinkers for his achievements and the key role he played on global affairs. Let's listen to his goals and visions for the Boao Forum for Asia for the future. Tell me about your vision for Boao Forum from now on.
I'm honored to be elected as chairman of Boao Forum for Asia. I believe that the Asia and whole world are now changing rapidly. I hope we are moving ahead toward a better course, a better direction. But it is also true that there are many regional conflict issues, still poverty issues, and economic prosperity, economic benefits are not evenly, fairly distributed. In that regard, my chairmanship assumption at this critical time has a lot of meanings and implications. I feel a sense of heavy responsibility because Asia has been taking a greater leadership, particularly with the Chinese economic growth, and Chinese are taking greater leadership role in the world. Now, with the 40 years of reform and opening up of China, now I believe that China is also entering into a new era.
But at the same time, we also know that there is a debate about so-called incumbent power, rising power issue. How do you, as chairman of Boao Forum, try to balance this region with the rest of the world in the agenda, in the discussion, and also in your activities?
What is important at this time is that connectivity and mutual cooperation and partnership is much, much more important than domination by certain country over another, or seeking some other way of some undesirable partnerships. I was very much struck and inspired by President Xi Jinping's statement when he really made such a very visionary statement for the broader partnerships. For example, he said that China is going to broaden and widen their contributions to the international community by broadening the market access. He is committed to create some attractive environmental atmosphere for China. Is a manifestation and demonstration of self-confidence as well as a strong commitment to work together with the world at large.
I agree with you, Mr. Secretary General or Mr. Chairman, that China and the Asian countries should go ahead with this right road of development. But on the other hand, you have to look around. You have to respond. So how to make that balance work?
Now, as I am going to be chairman of this, in this very favorable atmosphere, let us see then how this Boao Forum can contribute to the economic and social integration process of not only Asia, but beyond Asia. In that regard, China has also announced a very good initiative like Belt and Road Initiative, and they have already established many years ago Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Those can be worked and used as two important mechanisms to realize his vision.
You talked about connectivity earlier, Mr. Chairman. How is that connectivity likely to be implemented and further developed with the platforms such as Boao?
Now, China, as one of the still developing countries, but has been taking very important initiatives, reaching out to many developing countries, particularly Africa and other Southeast Asian countries. This is a very important one, to connect China with the outside world through economic and technical cooperation process. You have already been approaching to many countries. In this world, with the transformative development of technology and transformation, the communications, then this world has become effectively one small planet Earth. The national boundaries are not much important at this time. We are just one family members in this the small planet Earth. That is why what Chinese is now doing is very much welcome in increasing connectivity among people. Yeah.
Boao Forum has a focus on Asia, but many have been saying, it has not been long that Asian countries have been coming together. How to come together and be able to complement one another and have bigger strength and presence of the world. I think that is a big issue. Mr. Chairman, your thought?
The Boao Forum was established basically to promote the regional economic and social integration in Asia and for Asia. So we are not basically discussing any security-related issues. But as I said earlier, without ensuring the peace and security in this region, then it will be very difficult to expect that there will be smooth and harmonious regional cooperation. That is the basic problem, as well as some points the Boao Forum should continue to promote. As newly elected the chairman of Boao Forum, I'll do my best utilizing my network as well as vision and experience as Secretary-General of the United Nations. Therefore, I am much hopeful. While globally speaking, we still have so many problems, and Asia can really show example through Boao Forum. Yeah.
But Asia's voice is not as strong as the other continents. For example, Europe, for example, North America, even though Asia's economic strength has really reached quite a height. So, Mr. Chairman, what about that?
Many scholars have already predicted at the beginning of the 21st century that 21st century will be led by Asia. I believe that prediction, and it is now happening. Now, I think one good example is that like China. China has become the second largest economy in the world. Asia itself accounts for 40% of international growth as well as economic power. Therefore, we should have, I think, a brighter future when Asia really can play a very crucially important role, raising their voices in international political and economic and social and technological and cultural areas.
Mr. Chairman, what a pleasure to see you today. Thank you so much out of your very tight schedule in Boao.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Congratulations to the former UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon to be elected as the new chairman of the Boao Forum. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Coming up on today's program, former WTO Secretary-General Pascal Lamy talks about China's continuing course toward reform and opening up. And later in the program, a conversation with Olympic skating coach Li Yan, whose speed skating team brought home the lone gold from the PyeongChang Olympic Games. Full interviews right after this break. Come back, you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live Monday to Friday on CGTN. Trade tensions, that's the thing we have been talking about in recent weeks a lot, between China and the United States have shimmered over the past few weeks. U.S. President Donald Trump, the White House made a surprise announcement that he is considering an additional $100 billion worth of tariffs on China last week, sending jitters over economic growth. Earlier, the White House also proposed tariffs on a list of 1,300 Chinese products worth about $50 billion. Beijing matched the new U.S. duties with retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. products. That at least is a possibility. As the former Director General of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, Pascal Lamy shared his views on how to trade better under the WTO system with me recently in Boao. Let's listen in. What do you make of the latest rounds of exchanges regarding the U.S.-China trade dispute? The messages you're reading coming from the U.S. side and the messages you're reading coming from the Chinese side. Sir.
Trying to read the U.S. side is difficult because they give signals in different directions, sometimes very confrontational, sometimes more amicable. So it's difficult to interpret.
Is that the strategy?
Maybe, but I'm not sure. It's for one to guess whether the U.S. are after preparing a negotiation, so building a bargaining power, or whether they are after wrecking the multilateral trading system in order to get rid of the WTO, which they believe does not work for them. Now, whether it's option A or option B, I don't know. Seen from the Chinese side, the reaction so far has been measured, and what we've heard from President Xi Jinping is that China is ready for a new wave of opening on trade, on investment, in services, in manufacturers, in protecting intellectual property. So whether this will appease the tension or not, I don't know. I hope so. But the good thing is that the Chinese president is now on the offensive on opening the economy and on doing this in a multilateral way so that this opening will benefit not only the US but also others, and notably the Europeans.
Talking about the trade issue, to what extent and under what kind of time frame do you think, Mr. Lamy, that some of the issues that we have touched on that has been brought to the WTO is likely to come up with some kinds of result so that all sides know where they are? Mr. Lamy.
I mean, if you talk about US taking China to the dispute settlement in WTO, or China taking the US, which is what they are doing, the average time for a full adjudication system is roughly 18 months or 2 years. So it has to be first looked at the first instance, and then usually there is an appeal at the level of the appellate body, which, by the way, the US for the moment have paralyzed in refusing to nominate judges. So this issue will have to be settled also.
On the other hand, what can the other members of the WTO do when, for example, one member of the WTO, the United States, refused to appoint the appellate judges? What would the other members do and can do?
They have several options. One being to decide by majority.
Yes.
Because after all, this is a procedural decision. That's a possibility. Another possibility, if the US refuses to appoint judges, i.e. try to kill the appellate body in the WTO, the other members can decide that they will appoint their own judges. They will abide by the determinations of this court, whether the US are part of it or not. This is a more extreme option, but it's an option which I think they should have in order not to be blackmailed.
When was the last time such option was being exercised?
It never happened so far in the WTO, not least because the US so far have been one of the pillars of the World Trade Organization.
You heard Mr. Lamy at the opening ceremony. Every leader that they believe protectionism should not be the driving force of our economy, and they believe that the world trade should not be decided by one country and one country's decision alone. So where do you think the WTO, as a result of the deadlock that we are seeing right now, is going from here? Particularly the largest economy, the United States, is taking such an attitude.
Well, there are basically two possible options.
Yes.
One, let's sit around the table. US has problem with the rule book, fine. Others also have problem with the rule book. I'm sure China would like the rule book to be more stringent to discipline US agricultural subsidies. I'm sure the EU will be fine with some sort of limitation of intellectual property for medicines in order to make them available at a reasonable cost. So, US may have its problem, China will have its problem, EU will have its problem, India will have its problem.
Right.
We all have our problems. Let's sit around the table.
That's option one.
List the problems and deal with them. That's option one. Now, if the US are after wrecking the system, if they want to kill WTO, then other WTO members need to coalesce in order to protect this insurance company against protectionism, which we've been building consistently for the last 70 years. So that's a more extreme option.
Yeah.
But I think it should be on the table so that a proper negotiation does not happen with a gun on our head.
But, Mr. Lamy, can I say both of these options are already with quite some difficulties, even the first option. Having all the parties sitting around the table, now we have parties refused to sit around the table, but rather want to deal with it bilaterally, not just with one country, but with several other countries we have seen over the past few months. So even option one cannot be an option.
I don't think there's any problem with opening trade multilaterally, regionally, bilaterally. Provided the cat catches mice, I don't mind the color of the cat.
Great quote.
As long as trade obstacles are eroded, whether you do it multilaterally or regionally, the problem is if the multilateral option was to be closed, that would be a big problem. So the essential for the moment is to keep the multilateral option alive, to keep the WTO alive as a system,
right, which
is more predictable, which is more fair, and which is more stable than bilateral relations.
When you are willing to deal with it multilaterally, the other party is absent, and it seems that one of the big chunk of the world economy is absent from the table. So what can be done? Is option one, once again, it's still refusable.
This is why we need to have option two, which is a WTO minus US if the US don't want to be part of a multilateral system.
What does that mean? When would you know that the other party is unwilling to come to the table? When will be the deadline? And when will be the time that all parties will come to a consensus? Let's just do it the other way around.
The price which every WTO member has paid is I reform my system for the price of getting a collective insurance against protectionism. So what binds WTO members together is that they refuse protectionism. If one country wants to go protectionist, for the moment the rules do not allow that. If this country wants to dispense itself from these rules, then others have to say, we keep together within the roof of our insurance company against protectionism.
Now you see Chinese President Xi Jinping at the opening ceremony of Boao trying to take a position in which China is willingly to take measures, for example, about its own opening up measures, whether it is in the service sector or the auto industry or some of the other areas. You also see Chinese side is trying to pledge that it is not willing to form so-called small interest groups. It is not willing to work on so-called small albicus, the so-called small calculations, only based on its own national interest alone. And you also see China do not want to, as the Chinese president said, force others to buy or force others to sell. So I wondered whether others are also going to have the guts to say so and to work so and to at least have a goal of such.
I believe most countries on this planet, for the moment with the exception of US, are of the view that trade opening is a win-win situation. That we are not in a world where imports are bad and exports are good. This might have been true 100 years ago. It's not true anymore. Which is why it has to work collectively with a sort of give and take trade-off, which is why China announcing that it's ready to move in this direction, I think is a big element now. The question is whether it's announcing or whether it's enforcing. Inevitably, by the US, by EU, by others, will be, fine, this is good, we are happy to hear this, when will this happen? How will this happen? And that's going to be the next question, and I'm sure President Xi Jinping knows that and is prepared to answer this question.
Mr. Lamy, before we go, final question for you. You have extremely rich experience working within the WTO system for years, and you have witnessed the ups and downs of our trading system over the years. What do you think is the most important thing that would help people to build confidence in it?
I think what's happening with this US offensive creates a situation where the value of WTO, which might have been underestimated because, true, it's difficult to agree on new rules, and there is a long debate on whether China is a developed economy or a developing economy, depending whether you are developed or developing. The amount of opening which others are entitled to expect may be different. So it's complex, it's lengthy, it sometimes is frustrating, but we realize, like we do it for an insurance company, that if the company goes bust, we have a big problem. So the present situation has one merit, which is that it reinforces the value of the multilateral trading system.
Mr. Lamy, it's always a pleasure at time of critical moments to listen to your words and your thoughts. Thank you so much for the insights.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Très bien.
We appreciate it.
Good.
Former Director General of the World Trade Organization, Mr. Pascal Lamy. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. Let's get up and close and personal with Olympic skating coach Li Yan, whose speed skating team brought home the lone gold from the PyeongChang Olympic Games right after this break. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. Beijing, together with the nearby Hebei province, will host the 24th Winter Olympic Games in the year 2022. Earlier this year, in February, China finished the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games with 1 gold, 6 silver, and 2 bronze medals. The only gold came from the short track speed skating team. As the coach of the team and also a retired skater, Li Yan has always been the team's rock. I caught up with her at the Boao Forum, sharing her experiences in PyeongChang and the future of China's winter sports. How do you assess your performance this time during the Winter Games in PyeongChang?
I think we do well because, gold medal always is a standard for their performance. So Wu Dajing get 500-meter gold medal. And also he broken 4 times Olympic record. Olympic always hard, It's because everybody expecting doing very well at a certain time. We call Olympic game. So this is why too many people, too many athletes have under a lot of pressure, and they won't do well. So all the pressure come to one point. It's really hard to present themselves. It's same as for our team. So because our team, during like a 12 days competition, our expectation pretty high at a certain events, like a distance, but we didn't get what we want at some point. But our team spirit, like fighting spirit, is still there. This gold medal is the last day, last moment.
Exactly.
We're waiting for so long, and really, once we get it, that's like a pressure and exciting. It's different.
Do you have to control yourself in front of your athletes?
It's not. Like I said, it's a practice. It's just myself. I didn't pretend to do that. Maybe at some point, little bit, emotion come up, but that's really short. That's short time. Most of the time, you really have to come to do what you're supposed to do.
Yes. Have they learned? Have they learned from you the skills?
See, 12 days, last day, Wu Dajing get a gold medal. This means we overcome our difficulty time.
Ms. Li, on the one hand, you got a lot of these tasks. China wants to hold the Olympic Games, host the Olympic Games, and therefore want Team China to do well, right? On the other hand, you've got these post-90s generation. So they have very different personalities, right? So you have a lot of pressure, tasks, but at the same time, you have to adjust to the current generation, how they interact. Tell me about how you do it.
Like my daughter is a teenager, 13 years old.
I heard you talk about that before.
And, the athlete is the same. They are just get younger and younger. I think they teach me, I teach them. The new thing is a lot come from them. All the younger athletes, it's really good. That's the feeling, you with young people, you're learning stuff, new stuff. You never feel you're old.
How do you see China's prospect in the coming Winter Games?
Beijing Olympic is a huge thing. It's a big thing for country. It's not easy to hold Olympics in different countries, but especially in China, because they require a lot of stuff, like all the rains, like ice and snow, those stuff. You should have like a lot of knowledge to put this together. Also for performance, you want to do well at home, right? Everybody wants to do well at home. So also, you have a lot of hope and wish, and you try your best, but also you're under a lot of pressure as well. At this age, we can do well for China at the Beijing Olympics. We try to bring our team to reach as higher as we can to represent China in Beijing Olympics.
What is your plan now? Do you have already a set plan about leading up to the day of Beijing Olympic Games?
You know, like winter sport is never and is big enough in China for now. But after Olympic, for sure, will get bigger and bigger. A lot of people will, join the winter sports, either for fun or for, for the career. I don't know, but for sure will be a lot of people be there with the winter sports. The plan is you should have a goal. The goal is if you want to get a gold medal or you want to be in the final, so you need to start right now. Once you have a big goal, you will try to do your best. You will overcome a lot of hard time. So this really require a team for the leaders like coach and athletes will follow same path to do a lot of stuff to make sure once Olympic comes, Beijing 2022 come, you're ready for that.
Of course, your team now are made up of different ages. Some of them will stay, some of them will leave by the year 2022. What is going to be the priority or criteria for you to choose whether someone stays or someone has to go?
So the plan is team 1, 2, 3. So from junior to senior, so all different age group. We're not cut for the age. Which age you can perform well. It's not because of that. It's because of ability. If you have ability to help in the team, if you have ability to win the medal for our country, so yes, that person will be chosen. So, but we always be prepared, like always. It's not even 4 years right now. It's every single day all counts.
What a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Li Yan, a very well-known coach from China for the winter sports. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.